Number 5. Now, just to let you know, I'm not a fan of the main actor of this film, but I am a fan of the director of the film. And I believe it's one of the best Halloween movies from last year. And that film is Hotel Transylvania. Man, this one, I believe, cracks me up the most out of any of the Halloween comedies I've ever talked about on this list. And I already said, I'm not a fan of Adam Sandler a lot, since a lot of his live-action films suck ass a lot. But I did admit that last year, when I saw this film in theaters with my grandmother, I said that this was the first time I applauded him. I applauded all of the actors in this film, even Jendy Tartakovsky, who is the creator of my favorite TV shows from Cartoon Network. The plot of this movie is that Count Dracula, played by Sandler, invites some of the best monsters, even his own friends, to his daughter's 118th birthday to the Hotel Transylvania, which he built the hotel for in the first place. But then one night, on the same night, a human named Jonathan suddenly stumbles on because of a certain prank that Dracula pulled on her by making a fake village and having his zombies disguised as humans. But is it a good story? It's good, to me that is, but the jokes are really, really, really funny. I mean, it also has some of my favorite comedians ever, and there's only one joke in this film makes me laugh a lot that involves the Invisible Man. And you may already know which one I mean, though. It's not the one where he appears, though. It's just the part in that heat room. The rest of the film, if you want to see this film, if you're a fan of the classic monsters, or any memories of Jenny Tartakovsky's work on television, give it a watch. Hotel Transylvania, a film that'll help you find your thing. Number 4. And this one, I believe, is better than the Tower of Terror that I mentioned earlier. And it is the second film on the list that's based on a Disneyland ride. The Haunted Mansion. Oh boy. Where do I begin with this one? The story of this film, based on a classic Disneyland ride, is that mostly the prologue of this film it's a bit of a romance with a horror background in it. One night, when Edward Gracie was about to propose to his girlfriend, Elizabeth Henshaw, he somehow finds her dead and thinks that she killed herself. And on that night, without love, he felt that nothing was important to him anymore, and he wanted to kill himself by hanging himself in his attic. Then, over 100 years later, when a certain flyer deliverer somehow gets startled at the mansion, he finds that one of the people in that flyer looks like Elizabeth and decides to calls her to the mansion along with her husband and kids. That family was named the Evers family, but when Jim Evers, played by Eddie Murphy, finds out about what's going on and they thought that they were there just to sell the mansion, he just wants to do everything he can to rescue his wife from being or something disastrous would happen. And seriously, this film is really good, but a little startling at times. It does have some stuff that weren't even from the ride, like the inside of the mausoleum at all, which is really scary with all those zombies. But Leota in this film is my favorite character, though. And if everyone thought that Constance Hatchaway was the best villain ever that was not from Disney Animations, Rambley should be on that list anyway, since he's the one who killed Elizabeth in the first place without Edward knowing. The Haunted Mansion. Okay, what to find a joke about this one. The Haunted Mansion. There's always my way to think about this film. And there'll be always my way. Number 3. This will be one of the best stop-motion films ever made. Out of all the Tim Burton films I mentioned on this list, I believed Nightmare Before Christmas would be the very best and my number 3 spot. It is Tim Burton's magnum opus, but unfortunately Tim Burton doesn't direct this one. I mean, it is his models, but Henry Selick, his friend, directed this one. The same guy who directed Coraline from earlier. The story of The Nightmare Before Christmas is like Jack Skellington is bored with Halloween all the time, and it gets tiresome for him. But when he and his dog go into a forest with holiday doors, Christmas seems to be the one that's most interesting to him, and he suddenly gets obsessed with Christmas after stumbling into it. And since then, he wants to do Christmas his own way, by making a Halloween-style Christmas, and then having Lock, Shock, and Barrel kidnap Santa Claus so he to take his place, which is a little bit twisted. But what I love about this film are the songs, mostly sung by Danny Elfman. Even the Oogie Boogie song. It's a shame he doesn't have that much screen time as well. And I especially love this film for its role in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. The Nightmare Before Christmas. A film that you can watch any time of the year, even during Christmas and Halloween. Number 2. Hocus Pocus. Man, where do I begin with this one? I was first introduced to this movie on Disney Channel before it ever sucked nowadays. The story of this one, it's about 3 witches who want to remain young by sucking the youthness out of children in Salem, Massachusetts. But then after they're hung for their deaths, hung for their crimes, 300 years, they prophesies that one day a virgin will light a black flame candle, and 300 years later, a teenage boy named Max and a few of his friends like Allison and his sister Danny go to the old house, which is a museum in that time, and see if it's all true. Also helping them to try to make sure the witches are at bay, that black cat named Thackeray Binks, who's been guarding the place ever since he's been transformed. And I love it for its comedy and certain other stuff. And this film is very recommendable. Hocus Pocus, a film that will definitely put a spell on you. So now we come to the final conclusion, the last entry on this list of favorite films to watch during Halloween. And the number 1 spot may come as a surprise to all of you watching. You may be surprised which one it is. That film is a crossover, which isn't a comedy from earlier. It's definitely a horror film between 2 famous slasher people. My number 1 favorite film to watch during Halloween is Freddy vs. Jason. Now, I probably may have explained a bit about this when I talked about the Friday the 13th franchise, but there's a lot to talk about with this one, but I have to keep this at bay because I really want to talk about my honorable mentions later. I consider this film my number 1 spot because it's like the Dark Knight Returns of the franchises. Freddy's no longer the silly comedian he was as his series went on, and Jason's no longer a cyborg or a zombie in this one. The story of this one, I probably already said, that Freddy is stuck in hell for being forgotten, and and he needs a henchman to help him have people remember him again. So suddenly he disguises himself as Mrs. Voorhees and has Jason kill off the people of Elm Street, Ohio. But all of a sudden, things do go too far when Jason won't stop killing and doesn't give Freddy any pleasure of killing himself. Also, the main characters, Laurie and her boyfriend, Will, and even some of their other friends, are pretty recognizable and memorable, unlike other main characters from the previous Nightmare or Friday films. But still, I already said that the plot of, driving all the way from Ohio to Crystal Lake, Massachusetts, or New Jersey, how can I possibly get there in one night when I said that it takes 8 hours when I looked on my iPod? In real life. Oh well, it's a horror film, so I probably have to make a plot point. And the fight scenes between the two killers are fantastic. They may be grueling at times, especially with the nightmares, but trust me, this film is definitely awesome. Freddy versus Jason. Two fights of evil. Or maybe a battle between evil and my #1 film to watch during Halloween. And that was my list of my top 25 favorite films to watch during Halloween. But before I leave you guys to go trick-or-treating, I have a couple honorable mentions to make. First, I'll start with Distubia. It was during the time when I was still trying to get used to horror films and thrillers, especially after getting used to that clip I was introduced to in video production. That's how I was introduced to Freddy versus Jason in the first place. But the story of Distubia is about a boy named Cale Brecht who gets under house arrest just for punching his Spanish teacher a year after his father got killed in a car accident. And all the time he's bored with nothing to do, nothing but spy on the neighbors. But then he discovers that one of his neighbors could be a serial killer. And also not just kills just anybody. He kills women. Probably to take their cars or probably experiment with their hair or something. The reason why I didn't put Distubia on the list is not just because of the song by Rihanna was made a year later, because the horror elements don't happen until halfway through. Especially if there's one scary part in the beginning of the film with the car accident. Distubia. Hopefully there's no killer next door in your neighborhood. And my last honorable mention is something that was recently in theaters, and it's a remake to something that was already done. And I want to thank my sister who gave it to me for my 23rd birthday. Evil Dead. Man, what good is this film without having Ash Williams in? Even though he only appears at the end. This film pretty much plays out like the original 1980s movie, but there's a lot of things that are different from it. I won't spoil too much of it, because I want you guys to see it for yourselves, even though you know the premise of the original as well. However, even instead of a man saving the day, it just goes back to the basic female saving the day, even though she got possessed in the first place. And I'm also looking forward to seeing that Ash and Mia might meet in the future. It's a shame that there's no sequel to this one, though. And I'm also looking forward to the upcoming Army of Darkness movie in the future. Evil Dead. Don't be careful not to find the Necronomicon, otherwise you're in for quite the shocking experience. And hope you guys have a splendid Halloween this year. I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince of Mustang Prince Orro Reports. And happy Halloween.